Rick Daddy here, back in the riceboytv garage, where I have intern Eli Jacobs' Honda S2000. There's two reasons you want to swap out your radiator. The first one is if you're making a lot of horsepower and you want to cool the engine more. The second is if it's cracked. Since Eli's is cracked and he wants to make horsepower, we're going to try to kill two birds with one stone. Since Eli's car has almost 100,000 miles on it, the stock plastic tank on the radiator cracked. We're going to replace it with this Mishimoto unit. It's full aluminum, thicker, and a direct replacement. For this install, you need a bucket to drain the old coolant into, a couple gallons of new coolant for the radiator, a ratchet, 10mm socket, a pair of pliers, a jack, and a jack stand for safety. Since Eli's car is so low, we need to use a stock jack just to get it up in the air, then use a real jack. If your car's not this low, you don't have to worry about it. A little higher, put the jack stand in there for safety. Then lower the car slower onto the jack stand. What you want to do is line up the bucket right under this drain bolt right here. Then loosen it slowly. Just like your engine, your radiator is kind of sealed. So loosen the cap and it'll start gushing out at the bottom. While we're waiting for the rest of the coolant to drain, we can take off these two radiator brackets using the ratchet and a 10mm socket. Keep this to the side because you're going to reuse it. Once the majority of the coolant's out, go up to the radiator hose, use the pliers, and pull off the clamp. Sometimes these get stuck because they're old and they get really hot. So you just kind of twist them around with a pair of pliers so you hear them crack. And it'll come right off. You don't have to take off the hood to get the radiator out, but it's better for you to see and better for me to see. If you're having trouble reaching the lower hose like I am, you take off this fan, taking off these 4 10mm bolts. Unplug this temp sensor at the bottom, put that to the side, you should be ready to pull your radiator out. Make sure nothing else is hitting, nothing's in the way. Watch for drips. Since the Mishimoto radiator is a direct replacement, you should be able to use the stock fans mounted to the new radiator without making any new brackets. Place the 10mm bolts to the fans, tighten them down. You want to transfer the sensor over from the old radiator to the new radiator. So use a big ratchet, and I don't have the right size socket, but a 15/16 is good enough. Snug, just make sure you don't strip it. Use the same thing to remove the plug on the new radiator. Just thread it in, make sure it's snug, go back, tighten it down. You don't want to go too tight because it's aluminum, and you sure as hell don't want to strip the threads on that. You want to make sure that the drain plug is tight on the new radiator. It's different than the wing nut that's on the stock radiator. 17mm bolt, use a ratchet, 17mm socket, snug it down, don't tighten it too much, you don't want to strip any threads. Alright, now that everything seems intact, it's time to drop in this new radiator. The new radiator should drop in pretty easily. Lines up with the stock brackets and mounting points. Just play with it a little bit until you feel it pop in. Check the bottom, make sure everything's flush. This side's good. So is this side. So you want to plug in the sensor. Really hard to reach at the bottom. Then the radiator hose at the bottom, which is equally hard to reach. Finally got that lower radiator hose back in. Top one should be a lot easier. Slide the hose clamp over. Make sure it's tight. Go back through and plug in the fans. Both sides. The final step for the actual installation is to replace the radiator brackets. Tighten the 10mm bolts. Reattach the hose to the coolant reservoir. Open the radiator cap. Since we're done with the bottom, we can actually lower the car. Or if you have a funnel, use it and pour the coolant in slowly. Make sure nothing's dripping at the bottom. You don't have to use a coolant additive, but if you do, we use Purple Ice from Royal Purple. It helps keep the coolant temperatures even lower than it already does with the new radiator. That looks like great Kool-Aid. Even though your radiator might seem like it's full because there's no more coolant going down, there's actually a bunch of little air pockets in there. So what you want to do is start the car, warm it up, let the thermostat open, then flow all the coolant through, maybe pop off the bleeder valve a little bit, let out some air pockets, then you should be good to go. Once you're absolutely positive that there's no more air bubbles in the cooling system, you pull out the funnel. Should have a little bit of overflow, but that's not a big deal. Put back the radiator cap. Make sure it's tight, locked. Wipe down any excess coolant from the radiator. All right, now that I finished all the hard work, I'm gonna send Eli out a test drive. When he comes back, I'm gonna have him clean up. Remember, for more tech stories, check back to www.riceboytv.com. Then lower the car slowly onto the jack stand, or fast.